Hi, everyone, and welcome into Plead Your Case, Waynesburg University's only national sports debate show here on WCTV. I'm your host, Austin Bechtold. Today, we'll be talking about the National Football League's handling of Tua Tagovailoa's injury, as well as the latest in college football and how teams are moving up and down the polls, and who are some teams that we should look forward to potentially sneak into the college football playoff, but as well as who we think are the best boxers of all time, and who is your boxing GOAT. That's all coming up here on Plead Your Case. So sit back and relax. It's time to start the show. We are set to enter week 5 of the NFL season, but there's already been controversy regarding injuries, and especially with Tua Tagovailoa and the handling of the National Football League, as well as the Miami Dolphins, considering his head injury, back injury. It's been called multiple different things, but regardless, there has been speculation and controversy as to how the teams and both parties have handled it. I'm joined by the doctor, professor, whatever you would like to call him. He has the answers for anything that you can provide on sports debate. Caleb Yauger, as well as the man with the most Italian name I have ever heard in my entire life, Benicio DeFalco. Guys, great to be alongside with you today. Caleb, let's start with you. What is your opinion and thought process on how the National Football League, as well as the Miami Dolphins, handled Tua's injury, and also having him play on a short week on a Thursday night in Cincinnati?
Well, here's the thing. I didn't necessarily watch the game, but looking at how the injury happened and seeing Tua stumble like that and fall to the ground, he looked so woozy and out of it that it was just like, is he going to be, how is he going to be for the rest of the game, the rest of the season? You'd think at that point, once he collapsed, you're like, oh, this could be, potentially long term. But the fact that he came into the game and played later on in the week, and especially, after that second injury, it was like, oh, this has gone too far. So I didn't really like it.
So the first injury occurred against the Buffalo Bills at home. Tua was brought down, pretty much driven into the ground. His head ended up hitting off the back of the turf. He got up, took a couple of steps, and then stumbled down woozily, and then was able to get back onto his feet and played pretty much the entire way to be able to lead Miami to a victory against Buffalo, and then plays against Cincinnati, gets hurt. You could see just the clenching of his fingers. It was very, very hard to watch. Ended up being taken to a local hospital, but Benicio, he was also able to go back with the Dolphins to Miami. What were your thoughts on the entire process?
I feel as if he shouldn't even return to the game against Buffalo. I feel like he should have been done right then and there. Now for going against Cincinnati, if they went about the precautions the right way and he passed every test, then I believe he should have played against Buffalo.
So the National Football League Players Association terminated the unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant who was part of the evaluation team for Tua that determined that he would have been able to go back into the game against Buffalo. So SRC is described as a sports-related concussion. So there's 3 different indications of how these features of what they try to diagnose for these types of injuries. Here's the first one. SRC may be caused by either a direct blow to the head, face, or neck, or elsewhere on the body with an impulsive force transmitted to the head. So we saw that with Tua when he was driven down against Buffalo, and we also saw that against the Bengals, which pretty much re-aggravated the injury to an extent that nobody wanted to see, or probably nobody, even the doctors, could have possibly seen coming. The second, SRC typically results in the rapid onset of short-lived impairment of neurological function that resolves spontaneously. So what the kind of details is, for example, when Tua was he was not able to walk very well on the field, but able to come back into the game and have the Dolphins win and drive them down the field multiple different times. It's hard to talk about just because of what we know and what eventually happened. Now, did the short week also play a major effect in not having a couple extra days of rest playing on Thursday compared to Sunday? That is very possible. But Caleb, from the start, was this even a good decision from the medical team of the Dolphins? The NFLPA obviously terminating the unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant. This entire thing has become a PR mess, and a mess that has potentially suffered long-term effects for Tua.
Yeah, when you read the description of what the symptoms were and how it played out, it's exactly word for word, almost identical to how it played out with Tua. I mean, he got hit and it was immediate, just he fell to the ground, but then he was able to come back and it seemed like the symptoms went away. But here's something else to think about. Functional disturbance rather than structural injury, SRC, may result in neuropathological changes. That's the description for this. Also, no abnormality is seen on standard structural neuroimaging studies. Maybe they missed something, but that's also a question of, should they know that this could happen, that they wouldn't catch it in the first place?
Right, that being the third definition of how an SRT can be described. So Benicio, this whole entire process has just been pretty much catastrophic for the Dolphins, obviously on the field, but more importantly off of it. Do you think that Tua, who has already been rolled out for this week's game for the Miami Dolphins, what do you think his thought process should be throughout this entire thing? Obviously, as a player, you want to get in there and try to win for your team, but at the same time, the doctor's got to be able to hold you back if necessary. And it doesn't seem like that was the case, and it just also seems apparent that he must have passed all the tests, and which is what was being brought to the table, saying that the Miami Dolphins, to some degree, didn't really do much wrong.
It's very, very hard for Tua, I think, in his mindset, because he thinks he should be out there and go play. I mean, he's had injuries in the past, but I think as of right now, he should listen to the doctors, take the amount of rest he needs in order to play at the highest level.
You know, thinking about this more in depth, Caleb, it's really hard to see how this can happen in the age that we are in, with the amount of concussion protocol, with the amount of player safety. In practices, we've seen the new type of technology for players with padding on the helmets. So to be able to see something like this happen is pretty appalling.
Yeah, absolutely. We like you said, we are living in an age where the concussion protocols, they have so much technology within the helmets. The doctors know exactly what to do when it comes to procedures to treating concussions. But, you know, it's a really difficult process to try to come up with. First of all, none of us are medical experts, so we don't necessarily what went on in the medical tent or what went on behind the scenes. But I just know that something didn't go right, and it could have just been seriously a medical mistake that somebody didn't catch, or just genuine mistakes by doctors, because, I mean, it does happen.
I think you're on a good track there, and I also think it's hard in the moment because symptoms might not be flaring up now, and as the week progressed leading up to the Thursday night game, it seemed like everything was going pretty smoothly for Tua, for him to be able to be in a position to play on Thursday. Coming up next here on Plead Your Case, we'll stay with football and go to college and talk about who we think are the top teams in the NCAA this season, and also some teams that we think can surprise people as the season reaches its midpoint here on Plead Your Case.
Welcome back to the NFL Pick'ems mini segment here on Plead Your Case. I'm your host, Michael Saliba. After 4 weeks of NFL play, we're heading into Week 5 of the NFL season, and once again we have pick'ems to make. After a 3-week win streak, returning is the king, Mr. Spencer Frattare. And looking to dethrone the king this week is Mr. Colin Rhodes. Gentlemen, I want a clean debate, and after further ado, let's pick 'em. All right, Spencer, we're going to go to you now first with the first game of the week, the Thursday night game. That's going to be the Colts, who are 1-2, at the Broncos, who are 2-2.
Well, Mike, Colin, it's a pleasure to be here on the 3-game win streak. Once again, I'll take my crown, throw it on. Colts, Broncos, let Russ cook. I'm going with let Russ cook this week. I think Jonathan Taylor is worth about a bag of potato chips. I took him first round, and he has done absolutely nothing. Broncos country, let's ride.
Colin, we'll go over to you now.
Well, thank you, Mike, for having me on the show. Personally, I'd have to agree with Spencer. Colts have been underwhelming this season. So Broncos, Russell Wilson's going to cook them.
All right, we're going to head over to the pond at 9:30 in the morning. That's going to be the Giants, who are 3-1, versus the Packers, who are also 3-1. Spencer.
Well, I've liked the Giants play this year, Mike, but I don't think they've played anyone too good. They played the Titans week 1, but I'm going to go with the Packs, Mr. Discount Double Chat. Give me Aaron and the Packers, baby.
Colin, go ahead.
I agree. The Packers are going to beat the Giants. The Giants have had weak competition in these few wins they've had. Packers going to roll.
All right, we're going to head into the 1 o'clock games here on Sunday. We start with the 1-3 Lions versus the 1-3 Patriots. Spencer.
Look, Mike, no Mac Jones, and I don't think he's supposed to come back. And if he doesn't, they're in a third-string, maybe second-string quarterback situation. I'm going with the Lions. No DeAndre Swift. He's going to rest till after the bye week, but I think Jamal Williams and Jared Goff are still going to propel this Lions team over the Patriots.
And Colin, to you.
I'd have to disagree. I think the Patriots are going to ensure they don't have Mac Jones, but Zeppy, he was pretty good last week, and I would even just say that it's Bill Belichick. Come on. He's going to find the win no matter what.
Understandable. We're going to go to the battle of the 2-2 teams with the Chargers at the Browns. Spencer, this is your team.
Mike, it pains me to say this, and while I would love to ride with the Browns, I got to play safe. You know, it pains me to do this, but I will be taking the Chargers. I don't really feel like giving my 3-game win streak up to Colin. So with that being said, give me Jay Herbo and the Chargers.
Interesting you went with the safe pick there. Colin, go ahead with your pick here.
I agree. The Chargers are going to run over the Browns, mainly because they still don't have Deshaun Watson.
Understandable. We're going to go to the next game. The Texans, who are 0-3-1, only winless team in the NFL, versus the 2-2 Jaguars. Spencer?
The Texans, yeah, like you said, Mike, probably the worst team in the NFL right now. But give me Trevor Lawrence on the Jags. He's been playing real well. This is his really good season he's having. I don't think the Texans will even put up a fight. It's going to be Jags easily.
And Colin?
Yeah, it is definitely going to be the Jags. Trevor Lawrence, he has been really good so far in his second year.
All right, and heading down south, we have a NFC South matchup, the 2-2 Falcons versus the 2-2 Buccaneers. Spencer?
Well, I'm going back to the meta, Mike. I'm not betting against Tom Brady. Give me the Buccaneers. I just can't see the Falcons beating Tom Brady and the Bucs, especially Mike Evans back in full force. Leonard Fournette finally had his good game. Give me the Bucs easily.
And Colin?
Like Spencer said, the Buccaneers. It's Tom Brady.
Yeah, I can't argue with Tom Brady there. We're going to go to the next game at the 1 o'clock slot, the 1-3 Steelers versus the 3-1 Bills. Spencer?
Well, Mike, while I was sad about the Chargers, let me first start off by saying Steelers. What happened? It's Jets, Jets. I heard it all when the Browns lost, but it's my turn. The Steelers lost to the Jets somehow this week, and now they ride into Bills Mafia, where they will be pummeled into the ground by Josh Allen.
Those are harsh words, Spencer. Colin, you're wearing the Steelers jersey, so maybe there's a gleam of hope here.
You know, I wish there was. I just don't think there is because it is the Bills, so I'm going to have to go with Bills Mafia going over the Steelers. Kenny Pickett, though, I think will have a great game. It's just going to end up in a loss. I'm sorry.
An AFC East matchup here, we have the 3-1 Dolphins without Tua versus the 2-2 Jets. Spencer?
Man, watching Tua went down sucked to watch, man. He was having such a great season. With that being said, I still think Teddy Bridgewater can carry this Dolphins team over the Jets. The Jets really haven't been too well this year, although they beat the Steelers and the Browns, which are two teams that really aren't that great. I still think the Dolphins can definitely lead a win and get a win over the Jets.
Colin, your thoughts?
I completely agree. Teddy Bridgewater is still going to lead this Dolphins team to a win. He's got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle as threats on the receiving end. They're going to run over the Jets.
Understandable. We have an NFC North matchup with the 2-2 Bears and the 3-1 Vikings. Spencer?
Well, my Captain Kirk, he came in clutch for me last week in the morning time. I needed the Vikings to beat the Saints, and they did. So this week, I am the captain now. Give me Captain Kirk and Jay Jetta. Give me the Vikings.
And Colin, what are your thoughts on this game?
I agree. It's going to be the Vikings over the Bears. The Bears beat the 49ers in Week 1. They haven't done much since, unfortunately.
And then our next game is going to be the 2-2 Titans versus the 1-3 Commanders. Spencer?
Well, Mike, like I tried to tell Joe Venzel last week, Carson Wentz looks like trash, and he sure lived up to it last week. That being said, King Henry is back in full force. Give me the Titans with ease over the Commanders.
Colin, what's your pick here?
I also go with the Titans, and for much of the same reasoning. It's Derrick Henry, and Carson Wentz has not been that good.
Completely understandable there. Last 1 o'clock game that we have is the 2-2 Seahawks with Geno Smith versus a questionable Saints team at 1-3.
You know, Mike, I have nothing written down on my paper for this one. I really did not know who to pick up until here. I'm going to go with the Saints. Andy Dalton looked really good last week. I really won't lie. I think Michael Thomas is going to come back, and with that being said, I'm thinking the Saints. Give me the Saints over the Seahawks.
And Colin.
I'm going to disagree and say that it is going to be the Seahawks. Geno Smith has been blowing away all the expectations people had for him this season when they thought the quarterback situation in Seattle looked bad. And it did, but now it looks really good. Geno Smith, I think, is going to lead the Seahawks to a win over the Aints.
Spencer, I have your back here. I have the Dalton jersey on. Thanks for the jersey. You know, it's a size medium, but, you know, once again, I can't win with you and Logan. We're going to transition here into the 4:05 game. This is going to be the 49ers versus the Panthers.
Well, Deebo Samuel is alive. For the first time ever, I felt happy having him on my fantasy team. With that being said, you guys all know it. I hate Baker Mayfield. He stinks. I love that the rest of the world gets to watch him play bad now. Give me the 49ers easily over the Panthers.
Colin.
I agree it's going to be the 49ers because Baker's not it.
That's all you have? I mean, I completely understand that Baker's not it. So we're going to go next into the 4:25 games. We have two games here. The only undefeated team left, the Eagles, versus the 2-2 Cardinals. Spencer?
Well, go Birds. And I'm talking about the Eagles, not the Cardinals. Watching Jalen Hurts this whole season has been a lot of fun. I got him a lot on my fantasy teams. He's been playing real well. He had me a little worried last week. They went down 14-0 early. But nonetheless, coming out of halftime, they played real well. They got the win. With that being said, go Birds. Give me the Eagles this week.
And Colin?
I will also go with the Eagles. They have been facing some really good competition. Jalen Hurts has risen to the occasion.
And then another NFC matchup, we have the 3-1 Cowboys behind Cooper Rush versus the 2-2 Rams, defending Super Bowl champions. Spencer?
I think the Cowboys are frauds. I think Cooper Rush really isn't that good. Sure, he's played kind of well, but, I mean, they have not played really any good teams. They're going to go against the Rams, last year's Super Bowl winners. I think this is an easy game for Cooper Kupp and Matt Stafford, and it should be an easy win for the Rams.
And Colin?
Well, as much as I would like for Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford to have a great game, I have Kupp on my fantasy team. I will go with the Cowboys and Cooper Rush, just because Cooper Rush has been really good so far as the Cowboys starter this year. He's undefeated in his career. Let's face it, that's great.
That's a valid point. You can't argue with that one. Going into what could be considered the game of the week, Sunday Night Football, we have an AFC North matchup. Both teams at 2-2, the Bengals and the Ravens. Spencer?
Well, Mike, big trust, woot. Give me the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. I'm not really sold on the Bengals this year. They looked real well last year, but they just really haven't looked well. I think they would have lost to the Dolphins if Tua didn't go down last week. With that being said, give me Lamar and the Ravens easily.
And Colin?
I completely agree. The Bengals are nowhere near where they should be. I'm picking the Ravens.
And I think it's hard for any of you up here to pick an AFC North team going against each other. You never want to see any of them win, but going into the last game of the week, Monday Night Football, we have the 1-3 Raiders versus the 3-1 Chiefs. Spencer?
The Raiders, who finally got their first win, it saved me last week. The Raiders winning was able to put me on this show, and I don't want to say too much again. I'm not trying to get kicked off the show. I'd like to stay on, but with that being said, I'm sorry, Logan. I got to go the Chiefs. I think this is a really, really easy choice here. Give me Patty Mahomes.
And Colin?
Logan, I really appreciate you having me on this show and going up against the pretender to the throne that is Spencer Frattare. But I agree with Spencer in this one. It's the Chiefs going up against the Raiders. It's the Chiefs.
Colin made a statement at the King. I don't
Colin,
like that.
calling you a fraud here at the end, and that's going to finish out our NFL Pick'em segment here on PYC. Stay tuned for more action.
You're watching WCTV, where we aim to bring you the best local coverage of what you care about most. Everything from local businesses to hometown sports and the latest weather. We're keeping up to date with what you need to know about issues that affect our campus and our community. We're telling the stories that matter, celebrating our past, our future, and our potential. So tune in for all the latest buzz right here on WCTV Channel 14, Waynesburg.
Welcome back to Plead Your Case. We're 5 games into the 2022 college football season for the AP Top 25, with the top 4 that would make the playoffs being Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and Michigan. Now let's start with the Wolverines. Benicio, do you think the Jim Harbaugh-led Michigan Wolverines, who had a really good year last season, is overrated or underrated, placed at number 4?
I have Michigan as slightly overrated right now. They haven't done great against Big Ten teams that they played, so far. I mean, their defense is the big focal point of this team, which is very good, but I'm not completely sold on their offense yet. Blake Corum, their running back, has done really good with 611 yards and 10 touchdowns. We'll see how they do against Indiana this week. I mean, they should win that one. So I think Clemson should be over Michigan right now in the rankings, but they haven't done much to really hurt anything past that.
So Caleb, Michigan has beaten Colorado State, Hawaii, UConn 59-0. Maryland at home was 34-27, and Iowa 27-14. I don't know. It doesn't seem too dominating yet.
I was going to say this schedule: Colorado State, Hawaii, UConn, Maryland, Iowa. No team sticks out as like, wow, they are absolutely fantastic. That doesn't mean that Michigan is necessarily a bad team. I would say as of right now, they're overrated. They haven't played anybody incredibly good, like I said, but the biggest thing that's going to be a factor for that is upcoming against Penn State, who's number 10.
That will be next Saturday against the Penn State Nittany Lions. We'll get into them in just a little bit. But now let's go to Clemson. Team that was down last season ended up opening the door for Pitt to win the ACC, which I know was pleasing to a lot of people in Western Pennsylvania to see Pitt be able to take a title. It's going to be a lot tougher for the Panthers this year. But Clemson is a team that, DJ Uiagalelei is playing better than last year, I would say, Benicio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's improved by the week, it looks like, this year. I mean, he's already got 1,000 yards passing and only one interception so far. I mean, they played good teams this year, all year. I mean, they played Wake Forest, which was a close game, and they just beat NC State this past weekend. I think they got the ACC unlocked.
I do agree with Benicio's point earlier that Michigan should not be ranked above Clemson because Clemson has proved they've beaten 2 top 25 teams in NC State and Wake Forest. So I think that they're slightly underrated so far.
Yeah, and those two teams with decent quarterback play as well. Now to another team that has a new quarterback and a decent quarterback at that, USC. So USC is back. They get Lincoln Riley. They get Jordan Addison. They also get Caleb Williams. And the Trojans look pretty good, but also the Pac-12 is not very good. Caleb, is USC a team that is overrated, underrated, and are they a product so far of their schedule?
They're a little overrated as well. I'm going to put it similarly to the situation with Michigan. They haven't played really any top 25 teams. They're coming off a 42-35 win against ASU, but ASU is 1-4. So do with that what you will.
I'm going to have to agree with you here. I mean, their offense is loaded, but they struggled a little bit against Oregon State. I mean, but their defense kind of made up for it with 4 interceptions there. I mean, they should beat Washington State on Saturday, but as of right now, I'm going to go overrated.
I think USC is a little overrated as well. I think they're just a product of the people that they've brought in and the explosiveness of that, and that it's Southern California, and there's a ton of buzz around a Pac-12 team being somewhat relevant again because USC doesn't give the same buzz that an Oregon or a Washington does, or even a Stanford. So I think that's part of the reason why USC is at 6, but still a very solid team that has a lot to prove. And a game against Utah coming up in a couple of weeks on the road will be the one that definitely will define this USC season. Now, Ole Miss defeated Kentucky 22-19. This was pretty much a statement win for the Ole Miss Rebels, and I think that they're rated properly at 9th. Ole Miss has proven some things over the last couple of years that they're always a program in the SEC. Now, without Matt Corral at quarterback, that is always going to try to bounce back and rely on their defense. Caleb, for me, Ole Miss is a team that is right in the area where they should be, 9, maybe even to 12. I could see them, so I don't really have a problem with it.
Yeah, I don't have a huge problem with it either. If I were to say anything, it would be slightly overrated, but I'm not completely upset that they're ranked number 9. Like you said, they have a win against a top 25 opponent in Kentucky, 22-19. So if they're there 9-12, 13-4, I'm fine with that.
I'm perfectly fine with where they sit right now. I mean, their defense is playing really well. They had 2 turnovers in the last 3 minutes of that game last week. I mean, we'll see how they stand against LSU in 2 weeks. They also got Alabama the following. They'll probably slip a little bit after those. I got them beating LSU, but against Bama, I mean, they're still tough.
Once the non-conference schedule is over and we see, which is over now, and we see these teams that are facing now the conference opponents, and it's not so much those teams that you pay to be able to come in and play against you, which didn't work for teams like Texas A&M losing to Appalachian State, for example. But we've also seen now the potential for these bigger matchups, and we spoke about the Michigan side. How about Penn State? This is going to be a huge, huge battle in the Big Ten coming up next week. The Nittany Lions at 10th in the country, 5-0 on the season, a 17-7 win against Northwestern at home. Now, it wasn't a great game for Penn State, to be just clear and honest about it. The conditions were awful. Sean Clifford was okay. 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He's been just decent the whole entire year, which you all are waiting in the wings to be able to pick up for Sean Clifford if he falters or whenever Clifford is eventually going to graduate after what seems like, his 6th season of college football now. Caleb, do you think that Penn State is ranked properly, or do you think they need to shift?
They might be slightly underrated because they started off the year against a tough Purdue team on the road, and that's not necessarily the easiest win. It was a little too close for comfort. They beat Auburn easily. Auburn's a decent program. They beat Northwestern 17-7. You probably want a better result there. Well, once again, it's the biggest factor that's really going to be the telltale of this team is against this Michigan team. I'm going to say it again. Both of these teams are highly ranked, but whoever wins that is really going to determine who's the better team.
Benicio, the Penn State defense lost so many players from last year that ended up going on to the draft. Jaquan Brister, just a highlight of them. And I think still they're able to find these players. Joey Porter Jr., a Pittsburgh product. Joey Porter Sr., who played for the Pittsburgh Steelers, his son, as well as Abdul Carter at linebacker. Linebacker U, Penn State, really starting to step it up.
This defense for Penn State is playing out of its mind right now. I mean, like you said, Caleb, it is going to come down to the game next week. 2 weeks against Michigan. They got the bye this week, though, so, maybe they have a little longer time for game plan and really look at how Michigan's looking. Like I said, their defense is a big focal point of this team. I'm not completely sold on their offense yet, but we'll see how they stand against Michigan.
Kentucky's 13th in the country after losing to Ole Miss. Caleb, a basketball school that's been very relevant in football this year in the SEC, is the surprise of how good Kentucky's been something of what we've seen from Kansas as well, but this also seems like it's been something from Kentucky that's been building over the last couple of years to the point where it's hard to tell if they're properly rated at 13 or not. But yeah, I still think a little overrated.
Maybe slightly overrated, but I will say, if you want to make an argument for Kentucky, they did beat Florida and they lost a close game to a pretty good Ole Miss team, 22-19. I'd say right where they should be, but if they were lower, I'd be a little more comfortable with that.
I got them in the perfect spot right now. They're still a good football team. With the loss to Ole Miss, a game they honestly should have won if it weren't those 2 turnovers in the last 3 minutes. Will Levis is playing out of his mind right now. He should be the 3rd quarterback selected in next year's draft.
Still a long way to go and a lot of football to be played. The most important games of the year are still on the schedule, which is great to be able to see coming up for college football's landscape. But coming up next here on Plead Your Case, we'll get into who we think is the GOAT, the greatest of all time for the sport of boxing. Time to step inside the ring here on Plead Your Case and discuss our best boxers of all time. Let's start with Benicio. Who do you think is the greatest ever to be able to put on the boxing gloves?
Muhammad Ali, in my opinion, is the greatest boxer of all time. He's 56-5 with 37 knockouts in his career. He's a 3-time heavyweight champion of the world. He won the gold medal at the Olympics, and he was striped 3 years of his boxing career in his prime. And he came back and knocked out George Foreman to take his title back when nobody wanted to fight George Foreman. He, in my opinion, started the trash talk trend and could really sell a fight back then when nobody was doing it.
Well, that's my argument as well for Muhammad Ali. Caleb, what's yours?
Well, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. I'm the great Muhammad Ali. Look, I have a lot of respect for Muhammad Ali. I think he is one of the greatest boxers of all time. And he was a big advocate for social change and the greatness. And he's not only one of the greatest boxers, but also one of the greatest figures to ever walk on this planet, because he had so much more change than just in the boxing ring. It was outside of that. But if we're strictly talking about boxing, that's what we're trying to debate here. The greatest boxer of all time, I'm going to go with Sugar Ray Robinson. He competed in the lightweight, welterweight, middleweight, and light heavyweight. Fighter of the decade for the 1950s. And his record, mind you, 202 fights, 175 wins, knocked out over 100 different guys. And Muhammad Ali said, and I quote, "That man was beautiful. Timing, speed, reflexes, rhythm, his body, everything was beautiful." And he also said, "I'd say I'm the greatest heavyweight of all time, but pound for pound, I still say Sugar Robinson was the greatest of all time."
I really think, though, and you kind of alluded to it, the impact that Muhammad Ali had, not just in the boxing ring, but also out of it. And there's also that completely iconic picture whenever Sonny Liston, he's going up against him, and he's standing there with the fist up, and there you can see the old cameras even in the background for the photographers, and just the lighting on how great the picture is. When I think of boxing, I think of that image, which makes me think of Muhammad Ali, which makes me think that he is, of course, in my opinion, the greatest boxer of all time. And his record speaks for itself. Benicio discussed it, 37 knockouts, just the way that he went about his business. And he set the standard for boxing. And especially in boxing's heyday, he was the figure and he was the face, Caleb.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with that. I think that Muhammad Ali, I agree with you what you said about him being the greatest of all time. I mean, I'm saying from a pure boxing standpoint, if you're looking at numbers and you're looking at what Sugar Ray Robinson did, it is better than what Muhammad Ali did.
It's hard to top.
It is hard. Yeah, it is hard to top. But you could, if you want to go by strictly records too, you could also argue Floyd Mayweather has never lost a professional match, and he's 50-0. But I don't want to put him up there with Muhammad Ali.
Right. Well, at the same time, Floyd Mayweather more so plays defense. He's kind of a defensive boxer, if you would say so.
See, I think he's a fantastic boxer in the sense of when he faced off against Conor McGregor, he let McGregor just keep throwing those punches, but he was playing defensively. People were like, wait, why isn't he going for it? But he was tiring McGregor out, and McGregor just couldn't do anymore. And then Floyd Mayweather said, it's my turn. He's a very, very smart boxer, in my opinion.
He is, and he's a very, very rich boxer as well.
Yeah.
He's able to make the money. But what do you think, Benicio, of Caleb's argument?
I mean, Sugar Ray, great boxer. But if we're talking impact on boxing, there's not going to be another Muhammad Ali out there.
Do you think, maybe to change the topic just a little bit, that the decline of boxing just a little bit and the bigger impact of UFC and mixed martial arts is something that might make boxing and the legends like Muhammad Ali and Sugar Ray maybe not forgotten about, obviously, but have their accomplishments not talked about as much, Caleb?
I think the legacy of Muhammad Ali and those kind of boxers are going to they're going to live on forever because, boxing has a lot of similarities to UFC. Obviously, UFC, you have more than just throwing punches.
Right.
But UFC is growing in popularity, and it is kind of scary for the sport of boxing. It was much more popular back in the olden days, but UFC is definitely growing in popularity as well.
Boxing is definitely looked over a lot with UFC matches nowadays. I mean, look at the numbers for a UFC match compared to a boxing match. A lot more people are tuning into the UFC more than boxing now.
Guys, great discussion today. Just a phenomenal job being up here with you guys. And for our entire crew, for Benicio DeFalco, for Caleb Yauger, and everyone in our mini segment, Mike Saliba, Spencer Frattare, as well as Colin Rhodes, and our producer, Logan Lepiscopo. I'm Austin Bechtold saying so long, and thank you for watching Plead Your Case.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.